Time to get that coin. You gotta think about that coin.
Welcome. You're listening to Nuditea, a podcast where we get naked with our feelings while drinking tea. I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Wendy, and on this podcast we talk about food, travel, adult life, our feelings. On this episode, we're talking about financial stupidity and responsibility as young adults. Just some thoughts, some of our experiences, what we're wasting money on these days. But first, our teas. I don't know if we're doing these episodes back to back, but we are drinking a chilled English breakfast.
Still needs time to chill.
Mine's good.
Okay.
Because of all the tiny little ice blocks I've got in there.
True.
This episode, I just had a lot of thoughts recently about, and kind of just always, about the money that I'm spending and the ways that I spend it and things that I could be doing differently or have started to do differently, things that I've started to think about more as an adult. Just like trying to really transition into being a real adult a little bit and what that means in terms of money management. Do you want to start?
Sure. Well, do you want to just talk about like things that we spend our money on that people might not think are necessary, or we're like, maybe we spend a bit too much money on that? Mine would probably end up being board games and graphic novels. I also go see like a lot of musical shows, sometimes in Stratford. I do actually go to the movies quite a bit.
Back when COVID was not a thing.
Yes, used to go to the independent theater downtown. And I actually haven't spent money on board games in over a year, I would say, because these things become a lot to store and move, as you know, I'm remembering as I'm moving out right now. So I actually have been gifted them, which I certainly love when people, they know me. I'm actually, I think, pretty easy to buy for the most part.
As long as someone knows like what you look for in a board game or what you look for in a graphic novel. Yeah.
So yes, I do enjoy that, but yes, I definitely have a very large selection, and Wendy can attest to that.
So we have one of those IKEA bookshelves that are like the 8 cubes stacked in 2 rows. That thing was full of Kim's board games and graphic novels. I think board games took up how many? Like 4?
But that's not, like, I have varying sizes of board games. So
yeah.
I definitely, like, the last setup I have is like, this is a beautifully packed
it's like a little puzzle. Just like fitting little pieces of board games into the bookshelf.
Yeah. And then I also have two of the shelves were taken up by graphic novels, and then one was puzzles. And then the other one was like Euro and Michelle's
measly
books.
Items.
Yeah. So definitely that, like, and then also graphic novels I've spent over the year, and they can run from anywhere from like $12 a volume. I buy in volumes, not issues. Issues are like the single, like smaller books, I guess, and then
they
volumes
look like booklets.
Yeah, and then volumes contain like 4 or 5 of issues. So I buy them in like so they're kind of like more book form in a way. And so I buy these things, and while I regret maybe spending as much money as I do, at the same time, like, I get a lot of use out of the board games. It's a really fun time because the friends I have, and it really brings people to the table to kind of hang out with each other. And with graphic novels, I'm someone who appreciates like the art style in these graphic novels. So it's like I'm buying art with like a story.
Yeah.
So there are maybe some graphic novels, or I shouldn't have bought as many series. I'm very much a completist in the sense that like I've started a series, so I need to then complete that series. I've committed. But in order to curtail my spending on those, I started to buy like just one-off, like one-shot stories that were either sometimes nonfiction, fiction. With regards to going to musicals or going to movies, that again is like an outing with friends sometimes. The musicals in Stratford, like, I super enjoy, and so I don't actually regret spending money on them. And with movies, I follow some people on YouTube that have similar movie taste to me, so I usually take the reviews like, oh, I'll probably like this movie, and I tend to, so it doesn't really feel like a waste of money, but like it's spending that I could possibly cut back on if I'm feeling like it's too much. And then also I kind of eat food out a lot because of like weekly trivia or going somewhere. I get really lazy and I don't always buy enough groceries, and I'm like, I'll just buy dinner on Wednesday. those are times where I could maybe not spend as much money, but those are like the areas of my life that I'm like, there's some room for change on how I spend.
Yeah. I think for me, I just have a love for clothing and material items. I'm a materialistic person. I love to collect clothing items, and it's become a little more dangerous now that I have, more money than I used to go for even higher end items. One of the ways that I'm trying to compensate for that is I was on a 2-year no clothing ban, basically new clothing ban, where I was not allowed to purchase new clothes from stores. I was able to only buy thrifted or consignment items, and that was for 2 reasons. 1, to try and curtail my spending habits, and 2, because the fashion industry is hot garbage and they need to really change up their structure in terms of environmental issues and treatment of workers, etc. So that's one of the ways I've been trying to cut back a little bit on spending money on clothes, but it's also becoming more and more easy for me to seek out vintage items or thrifted items, because those are fairly accessible to us anywhere you go. There's always going to be a Goodwill or Value Village somewhere. Guelph has lovely little consignment shops that I always somehow end up in whenever I go out and go grocery shopping. The attic, oh boy.
Just blacks out and goes into a
There's some days where I'm headed beeline to No Frills, but then I'm whoop! I'm in the attic now. Here I am. I gotta look. It's quite dangerous for me. Recently, for some reason, I've been on a weird designer handbag kind of in a phase. I'm in a phase. I'm going through something right now.
The designer handbag was more, I think, our old roommate's kind of thing that she was drawn to.
Oh, she wanted this designer goods, and she can probably afford them now. But I've never really felt that way about designer handbags or anything designer before. But in the past month, for some reason, I was so obsessed with treating myself as a graduation present, as a birthday present, as a present to gift myself for finding a new job. So I was really on the lookout for some expensive pieces, which were relatively not expensive compared to new designer items, because I was still looking for vintage pieces or pre-owned pieces and pieces that were quite small. So a little bit more affordable, but I was really going through it. I was so obsessed with the mini Louis Vuitton Papillon. I was going through a phase where Chanel was a possibility, that that medium flat bag. I was all up in their business on the Real and the Fashion File, and I don't know, I just really had to cut myself back a little bit and recognize where my spending capabilities are and where I should be allocating my money, which is something, unfortunately, as a young adult, you kind of have to consider, because we're going through a time when there's going to be a lot of different transitions in your life, moving on to new jobs, potentially moving into new homes and new cities, and having to deal with buying new things for your space or for yourself. That
How
all
much
takes
closet
money.
space you actually have in this new place.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things to consider. And I've always been a fan of having an emergency fund that I constantly put money into and never touch until it's oh, I'm actually needing to spend money, but I don't have a steady income or a sufficient amount of income for what I need to do. So I just had to nip it in the bud, Do I still want that LV tiny little cute bag to go on casual brunch dates? Yes, I do. However, instead of doing that, I have opted for a purse. I did treat myself for my birthday, as you know. I bought a few things, but one of them was the Muxin runway piece that was very affordable for a high-ish fashion brand, and that also has cultural and sentimental value to me. And I also purchased another vintage item that I think is very unique and is way more affordable and way more on my level of appropriate spending. and I think is just much more suitable for my style in general. So I don't know, I've been like reflecting a lot on like trying to figure out the root of why it is that I want to suddenly explore designer items, designer shoes, bags, clothing. You know, I'm trying to
I've never really found you to be that way.
No, because I'm
going shopping.
I'm so
you might
into
find
vintage.
a more designery item when you're thrift shopping, or if you are going to those consignment stores. But you'd actually actively be on like the websites of these higher brands. It's interesting.
Yeah, so just going through a weird phase in my life where I'm like, I feel like I want to be more adult and have adult money to be able to buy these adult things, but I'm not quite there, so I need to chill. I need to chill a little bit. Yeah.
I will say, you and our old roommate, you guys are just very good at thrift shopping, so when I went with you, it made my life so much easier, because sometimes thrift shopping can just be like mentally draining for me, just stepping into that store, so you gotta like look at everything, and sometimes you'll get me to try something on that's like not necessarily out of my comfort zone, but something I wouldn't have like been like, yes, gotta try this on, because I'm like, oh, I just skimming through, like this will probably work. So you guys definitely helped me.
But you're also not a huge like shopper.
Yeah,
you don't tend to go shopping very often, whereas I pre-pandemic would think about like, ooh, when is Goodwill gonna send out the next 50% off coupon, or like when is Value Village gonna have a little student discount, you know, like I'm always on the hunt, and I think that's what makes thrift shopping like more successful, is if you're constantly or regularly going out to these stores, because you see like the turnover and you're there when there's cool pieces to pick up. Right. So anyway, that's my major issue, is purchasing clothing, accessories, bags, shoes. Like that is my major problem. Neither of us, especially you, we don't spend a lot of money on groceries. I know you said you tend to eat out more. I do that less, but I also spend a little more on groceries than you do. So like that's not really eating up a lot into my finances.
That's actually where I cut my money out. Where I'm like, where do I save money? Don't buy certain foods or less food. You just eat less. And
there's
that's
been
how you
times Kim has just like completely skipped meals to be like, you know, I want to drag this out a little longer to save money, and also like not have to go to the grocery store, which is more true now for, you know, pandemic purposes.
Yes. Oof, man, I learned new ways to stretch food out during this pandemic.
Guess what, guys? If you've got flour and just like a random mishmash of ingredients, pizza is a very convenient, it's very filling, it could be nutritious depending on what you put onto it. It's a great option.
It's a fantastic option. Yeah. I have made more pizza this pandemic than I have probably in the past couple years. I still make pizza quite often because it is an easy thing to do, and it is a fun thing. If you want to like try different ingredient combinations that you wouldn't normally, because like even if they don't necessarily go well together, like it's got a bunch of cheese on it, like and it's carbs. Why? I can't complain.
It's delicious. And it may or may not be nutritious. So it's a great option. One thing I did want to discuss with you, which I think you do a better job of than I do, is using money for experiences versus for items. Because I've always tended to put all of my extra money that I feel like I can spend into like fashion and random items like antiques and
fabric.
I'm just a kind of a hoarder. I'm kind of a hoarder, but you know, it hasn't gotten excessive yet. But I think you do a better job of, you spend your money on like board games and things that are
even the graphic novels. Like I lend out mainly to one of our friends, Ben, a lot, and sometimes I'll get other people like, hey, do you want to read this graphic novel? It's pretty cool.
You rope them in, but but like the Stratford plays and going out to events with friends, like you do concerts sometimes, you travel a lot. Like you do
probably
a trip,
actually
like,
about
a
this
year.
about the same amount as you kind of have been traveling.
Yeah, because long distance relationship,
right.
It's a must. So I think I have been trying to, every time I want to make these purchases, I've been trying to reflect on like, okay, what is the trip equivalent of this amount of money? Because I'm like, I can buy, you know, these 2 Louis Vuitton purses and this cute little Prada bag, or
go see my husband.
This money is worth like a couple of trips back and forth / an entire like international trip. So just trying to like,
man, those bags are expensive.
They are. That's why
Clearly, I've never been on a designer website. Because it's one of those things I'm not necessarily looking for.
Yeah. The reasons for me wanting those things, it's literally because I want them. It's very like, it's not like I'm collecting them. Some people like invest in Hermes bags or Chanel bags because their value increases over time, potentially, depending on the model that you have. But I like utilitarian pieces, so I would be using these pieces, which means they would be getting more wear and tear, which means they would not increase in value over time. So that adds to like the lack of justification for why I would be buying these items when I could be spending money on travel, which is, I think, something that we should really be leaning into as young adults. We should be pouring way more money into like going off in the world and exploring and learning new things and having experiences and memories, rather than, for me, like more and more clothes. I just have too many clothes. It's so out of hand.
Well, I'm wondering, because you I think would have maybe joined maybe a couple more trivia nights or gone to a movie with us, more so if you weren't having to do the long distance.
Yeah.
So instead of being like, I have long distance, maybe I need to cut out the clothing so I can do long distance and these outings with friends or whatever. And you're also an introvert, so it wasn't like you're like had FOMO and you were missing out on anything by being like, oh, but I spent money on this shirt.
Yeah, but I also love food though.
That's
so
true.
That's the like, I cut out a lot of opportunities that I had for going out to eat, because like when I go out with you guys like do most of the social interaction. I'm kind of just there to pig out and like eat my food and like watch you guys and be happy. I like being in the presence of social interaction. I just don't necessarily always want to participate in it, but I do want to pig out. So I've had to like cut a lot of that out, and Uber Eats, I deleted the app for a really long time because I felt like it was too tempting. So like over time, I've adjusted my habits because of a long distance relationship, because it's just like a couple $100 every single time I have to go back and forth.
Yeah.
But those are experiences, right? So like I'm much more willing to spend...
You built a relationship around that.
Yeah, so like I'm way more willing to be able to experience my time with my partner rather than use that money for something else to own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, talking about travel, yes, I have traveled a number of times. I do sometimes, I don't actually regret traveling when I did, but in my brain, if I hadn't traveled, I would be student loan free. Like 100% I would be, because OSAP would kind of be fueled by like, oh, well, I have extra money, because I made money during my 2 years off between high school and university, and then I paid for like all of my first year with a lot of what I had. First year's so fucking expensive. We look back and I'm like, I spent $14,000 on first year. And then I also got OSAP though on top of that, because I was not under my parents. You know, when you get was it 22 and they're like, we don't care about you. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
So yes, I got money. And then my sister wanted to go travel, so we did England and Ireland. And then the next summer, at one point, this is third, fourth year, we went to Scotland, and I was in Switzerland for a bit. And then I did a Japan trip that was 5 weeks. It cost about $5,000 on average. Ooh. But like 5 weeks, right?
Oh yeah.
Like totally worth it again. And going to Colombia, I had a little extra money. So like these things, it's hard because you're trying to balance as a person being like, I'm young now. That's when you're always told you should travel when you're younger.
Yeah.
But that also means I'm still in school debt because of it.
Yeah. But also, like, but, okay, I feel like I would have a very different perspective if you were spending money on things that weren't travel experiences, you know? Because, like, you're right, this is the time for us to travel, especially for me, because, like, if I get pregnant down the line, I don't want to have to drag my kids out to travel with me, because that's just not fun. I've seen it. I've seen the parents out on vacations with kids. That's not a vacation, okay? You work away from home, and the work is you have to still babysit. As if parents babysit. But they are. They really are. So I don't want that to be a thing. I want family trips to be to look very different from a trip with my partner or with my friends. So I don't know, like you still have time to get a job or like go back to school and figure out student loans because you're so young that what's the issue with being in debt for a little longer?
And it's true. And like my sister, when she was telling me about like talking to me like early on, it was like, you're gonna be, debt is inevitable, you know, in our day and age. So it's one of those things that like, take the time to do this now and then you'll make money more after you like graduate. I haven't really gotten that stable job that's like I can increase my OSAP payments, so that's always kind of like daunting, but it's true, I'll pay it off eventually. But it just,
in the grand scheme of things, like, is this debt really going to be the thing that holds you back from getting these travel experiences? Because that would really suck.
Yeah, but it is that idea of like I could have it all paid off and then anything that I'm making is just my money, because all the money I have is technically in a way not my money, because that would all go to OSAP. It all I had to pay someone basically. But
and then the last thing I wanted to discuss, which I think is very important to talk about as young adults, is getting into investments. Putting shit in your TFSA and putting things into like ETFs and S&P 500s. Like, I don't know how many of us are actually doing it, because I'm kind of a noob and I only started maybe like 2-3-ish years ago, like really trying to understand what it means to invest and what it means to like put things in your TFSA and have that money go into investments. But the past like couple of months, I've been like, damn, we should all be doing this. We should all be like using this time to start our investments and build our investment portfolio. And I am in no way like an expert on this. If you want to learn more about this stuff, there's a lot of resources online. I have friends who have their own podcasts. They're called The Average Keeners. They work in the financial sector and they do a lot more like manual, like self-investing, which I can't do. I'm under like a management portfolio. So if you want to go listen to Average Keeners, they have some more information. I also recently found out that Britpop princess, also known as Patricia Bright, who's kind of like a fashion, makeup, lifestyle YouTuber. She also has a separate YouTube account called The Break Platform, where she talks about new money, young adults, make money, get rich, retire early. She's like one of the people who has really like built up her financial assets and her financial portfolio from like being a dead ass poor student with huge amounts of like financial debt, you know? So it's like these people have really motivated me to look more into investments and how to use my money wisely. And I don't know if you've heard of FIRE, like the acronym FIRE. It's financially independent, retire early.
You just say fire and I think of the festival, the Fire Festival.
Oh, not that. Not the fucking Fire Festival. The opposite of that. Because
not a scam, okay.
We're being responsible, and the whole thing is to work your money so that it works for you, and to basically have your money build it, like increase in value on its own, which aka is like you invest in different types of things. What that might be like investing in property, investing in bonds, whatever. And retire early is not necessarily like you actually want to retire early,
but you could financially do it if you wanted.
Exactly. So I'm all about that FIRE program. Patricia Bright is about that FIRE program. My friends on Average Keeners, they are so fire right now. Like, I want more young adults to be like, we're going all in on this investment nonsense, especially right now, because this is kind of like a weird time. There's a lot of like conflicting information out there on investing during what is definitely coming to be a recession. But if you look back on the last recession, there were a lot of young adults in that time who put some money into investments wisely and are now very well off because of it. Because we're so young, we have time to wait this shit out. The recession is not going to like hurt us in our retirement.
Yeah.
It will hurt us down the line if we like have not developed a financial portfolio to support ourselves with if we don't end up getting like that extra cushy job, you know? I just want to be well off in my old age. I want to be able to take care of myself, you know? And in China, I think the whole tradition is, oh, you take care of your parents when they're old and like, you know, they're not working anymore, they're retired, they're on a pension, which is a lot less money than what they were making before. They may not have as many savings because they've been raising you their entire lives. And I think now we should be shifting towards what's the best way for you to not be a fucking burden to the rest of your family when you're old. I think that's where I'm going because I am planning to have kids. And do I want my kids to have to like pour out for me when I'm old? No, I want them to enjoy their own money, have their own experiences, be able to go travel and not worry about student debt and all of that nonsense. So like, that's where my mindset is right now. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm doing. I literally don't know what I'm doing. And investing is just go read up on it. Go watch those YouTube videos. I can't do it by myself, so I'm paying Questrade to do this for me. So, you know, there's a lot of options out there for people who just literally don't know what the fuck is going on.
Who is me? Yeah.
Again, like go, and there's like, so I'm using Questrade, but one of my friends, she's with Wealth Simple, I think it's what they're called. One of our good friends actually works for Wealth Simple, so he recommended it to her. It's just like another online investment type of company. You've probably heard.
I'm trying to think of who the person is. Not me. Do I know this person?
Yeah. Anyway, so the interesting thing about investing now is also you get to choose your level of risk and the types of things you want to invest in. One of the main things I think is interesting to look for is like environmentally friendly / sustainable / ethical investment portfolios. So they're not investing in like
oil,
Zara or like H&M, you know, like there's options for you to do things ethically and within your comfort zone. And I know you're not doing it, so I'm just recommending that you look into it, just even a little bit. Time to get that coin. You gotta think about that coin.
I did do a little bit of investing between my 2 years off because I had accumulated quite a bit of money, but it was very low risk because I'm always afraid that I'm too fearful. And I know that my parents, like I never saw them like hugely investing in things, but they probably did. Honestly, I just was too young and I didn't ask questions. So I did a little bit of something and it just didn't yield me very much money. It yielded me a little bit, but and so I didn't get back into doing that again. And then my sister Lorraine was all like, you need a TFSA. Yeah. And so I did do that, and I was putting money in when I was working, but then I wasn't working, and then I used that money to pay for my trip. So.
Oh, okay. But I mean, again, like we're still young, and the earlier you start, the better it gets. And I know for most young adults, we don't want to put our money into something that's more risky. However, the flip side is like, you're young, you're probably also not putting in like $2 million. So if it's extra risky, like it's not a huge deal. I wouldn't say like go all out and like just throw money at risky investments. You have to figure out like what's a good balance for you. But also the time factor, because we've got time to wait it out. I only check my investments on an annual basis because I have people managing it for me now, and I trust Questrade to do that. Please don't let me down. But I only check on an annual basis because it's not like a year or 2 year type of wait. You know, like when you invest, you're in it for like the long haul. I'm not going to be super interested in what my investments look like until I'm in my 50s, and that's when I'm going to start being like, is this working for me or is it not working for me in terms of my retirement? So like another 30 years down that line. So I think now is the time to do it, Kim.
Okay.
You got this. You got this.
Well, I'm at my parents' just looking into life. I'll add that to the list.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they maybe taught this in high school a bit, but at the same time, our high school students going to really care. Like, there's that level of do we care? It doesn't really feel like it's something with a focus on. There's going to be the few people who are like, pay attention and actually are like, ooh, this is really good information. And I do know they have like a university course that teaches this stuff,
but
I
mean,
didn't
we
take
were in
it.
Sciences.
I didn't have anywhere on my room on my schedule to take these courses. So,
and if I did, I was going off and learning like other courses that interested me, which was not like financial management.
Even though it's a smart move,
not
to
what
do
I'm
that.
into. But I think the nice thing about that is now we have all of these young adults who know what they're doing and who are creating resources or linking us to other resources that are easy to understand. They're completely like manageable. It's like they make it fun and easily absorbed. And like those are the things that I wish high school was able to do for us, because like if we all knew about this coming out of high school, I think that would have made our lives like very different in terms of how we manage our finances.
It would help with like some debt. You might not have as much debt, or you'd have more money to pay that off sooner, kind of deal. So, yeah, it would have been good information. But I was always constantly worried because you just hear about the stock market crashing and all this stuff, and you're kind of told about this, or like people losing money on investments. So you get very fearful. And I'm like, I work for the money that I have, and I don't want to potentially lose that. So I remember like being young, like very much worried, because they were like asking me like, how much you want to put in? And I put in quite a bit of money. But it was low risk. So meaning I'm going to yield back less money, but I was all like more secure in that because I wasn't going to lose it. But really, in hindsight, I should have gone with a little bit of risk back in 2012.
So young. You've got time to wait it out, you know?
Yeah. I was also like at a bank, and maybe because I was young, I feel like one of my parents is there, but they weren't really pushing me to necessarily do anything.
Yeah.
Which was also probably right of them, because I was like 17, 18, so I don't know.
But like neither, like our parents were not in any way, shape, or form a part of that world, where they were not like into accounting or the financial field. And I think my parents always say that they wish they had more exposure to that earlier on, because they would have pushed me to invest earlier. They would have invested earlier. And some of my friends who either they or their parents have been educated in that field or have always worked in that field, they're the ones who knew early on what to do and how to do it and how to look for resources that they didn't know, and like how to approach risk management. I don't think it's necessarily your parents were like, oh, she's too young to start investing. It's that they didn't know either the pros and cons of investing early and how much to invest. And it's hard to, if you don't know anything, it's also hard to take advice from like a bank person.
Yeah. Well, I think it was probably my dad who did say I should invest something. Either that, or my sister Loren's always been like, Kim, you need to like do
Loren's
this.
out here trying to get coins.
So I'm not sure if it was her at that moment, or my dad was all like, you have quite a bit of money, you want to go down to the bank and like do something with that. So he might have. So I think my dad's kind of always had a mind for that in a way. So, but I don't think he necessarily pushed me to like go high risk. But that's also probably because like maybe he doesn't go high risk a lot with his investments.
It just depends on what you're comfortable with. Right now, my portfolio is set up for a slightly higher level of risk, because you can always change the kind of portfolio you want to go for. So like if I foresee me needing to take money out or needing that pile of money for something down the line, maybe I'll go lower risk, just because like I don't know how the market is going to fluctuate and what it's going to look like when I do need that money. What I do know is that the market is always going to grow over time. We're going into a recession right now, but we are going to come out of it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just buying it all up right now.
She whispers it.
Listen,
I don't want to give too many people ideas.
Not everyone is into the idea. Like a lot of people were encouraging you to just like sell everything and like wait it out and, you know, buy back in when the market is more steady.
But in order to sell everything, other people have to want to buy it, right? So you do need the people being all like, yeah, I'm going to invest right now. But then you're gonna have to sell, and they're not be like, I'm not gonna pay for that like very high right now. So you're not getting a lot back.
You would be losing if you sold right now, because everything's like a low price.
Yeah.
But that also means it's a good time to buy the correct things. Like I wouldn't, you know, I'm not my management people, and they know what to buy and what not to buy right now to make sure that I don't just like lose out on a bunch of money. there's like certain things to look for, certain things that are always more safe to buy. So like, you know, look into it, index funds, that kind of thing.
Kind of like a double investment. You're investing your money and hoping that the knowledge of Quest Trade, is that what you call it? Yeah, are good enough to know the investments that they're having you invest in.
Yeah.
They're good enough.
They're
investment on investment, really.
They're doing their thing, you know, and that's the other thing. At which point do you want to consider maybe not using a management platform? Because you can buy and trade yourself. I just don't have the knowledge or experience to be able to do that. And it's always better to be buying and selling and trading, whatever you want to do, on a more regular basis, because then you're really getting the most bang for your buck. So I'm told. But if I was doing that myself, I would be very nervous, because like I don't know what the price looked like a month ago or what I think it'll do next month, but they do. So like, just if you don't know anything, just let other people handle it. I think Wealth Simple and Quest Trade are great options.
Okay, thank you for listening to this episode of Nudity. If you want to listen to this one and past ones, you can find the audio podcast on anywhere you listen to them. Yours. You can also find the video podcast on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram, all at Nudity Podcast. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.